Welcome to the intro episode of Soundcheck Chill, your backstage pass to all things K-pop. This is a podcast made by the fans for the fans. You are free to come in here. You can discuss the beats. You can discuss the tea. You can discuss your favorite meme. Honestly, you can discuss anything you want within the realm of reason. Let's remember boundaries, babes. We are just fans at the end of the day, right? My name is Exandria. I'm one of your hosts. This is actually my pet project. I am the addled mind in which created this lovely little space that I'm hoping that we really get to explore together, as far as this podcast is concerned anyway. Many of you may recognize me from the Clock app. My user over there is Nirvana Formerly, over the better part of the last 3 years, I have spent kind of amassing a little bit of a following in a common interest, if you will, in holding a certain 5'7" Australian man accountable for his actions, but we will get more into that later, trust me. Anyway, I've actually been a K-pop stan for the better part of the last going on 15 years. I started becoming active as a member of the fandoms back in like 2011. I was in an international fandom, obviously. I got into Shinee. Baby! In 2010, actually. I accidentally, on purpose, stumbled across one of their videos on YouTube. Lucifer was actually the one that got me into K-pop. It was my gateway, so to speak. And from there, it's honestly almost like history. You know, I fell in love with the concepts. I fell in love with the music. I fell in love with the group. And following them from an international standpoint, it was surreal almost, because before then I'd really just been like super into like anime and J-pop, and it's like YouTube's algorithm said, oh, you like foreign art, I see. Anyway, here's dancing boy bands. Enjoy. And my little gremlin, undiagnosed ADHD brain said, oh, I like this, actually. I like this a lot. Do I like this? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And it's been a downward spiral ever since, but I've loved every second of it, truly. Outside of that, you know, I really, in the creation of this podcast, wanted to give a space to allow fans to kind of come together and discuss more about the industry at large, rather than just always just discussing new comebacks or always just discussing new visuals or always just discussing new groups. Like, let's talk history. Let's talk the music. Let's talk the culture. Let's talk how the fandoms have become what they are today, what we understand as the fandom experience, you know, and everything in between. Like, this is not just going to be like, oh, it's just a boring old history lesson. No, like, we can talk trash. Like, we can just sit here and smack talk, you know, one good day. Because one thing about me, two things for sure, I have some very, very strong opinions on a lot of different things. And I think this is a great space for other people who have been in the fandoms to be able to share those opinions. You know, again, within reason. Let's respect boundaries at the end of the day. But I really just wanted to give the opportunity to allow people to learn more about the industry, to be able to understand more of like how it's continuing to grow and how it's continuing to change and branching more as it's expanding its already like extreme popularity, as it's growing more in the Western hemisphere and exploring the resurgence of like the boy and girl groups from like the late 80s, early 90s. You know, I was born in the era of the Backstreet Boy NSYNC, you know, competition, for lack of anything else to call it. And then, of course, you know, the Spice Girls became very, very big as well in my very early formative years. And then as time went on and I got into K-pop in my later teens, I realized so much how similar the concepts were, but it was almost like the concepts were new and more exciting and employed correctly, especially for a new generation of people consuming the music. And it cultivated even outside of, you know, the Asian markets. It was able to catch and capture the attention of international fans who had been consuming the media strictly through the digital sphere and only really being able to see things through things like YouTube videos and dance practices and things of that nature. And with how limited the access was to the media at that time, it is actually really impressive to see how so many, especially second into like early third gen groups, took advantage of that and were able to capitalize on that to the point where we ended up with the extreme success of groups like BTS, EXO, NCT, Blackpink, Red Velvet, and Twice. You know, seeing how those groups worked off of, you know, these phenomenal, you know, leaps and bounds that the second gen had kind of like placed for them, like these stepping stones, and seeing how those groups capitalized, and even going into fourth gen as we watch groups like APs, P1, Stray Kids, and aespa, Le Seraphim, all of those take what third gen did and blow it out of the water to the point where now there is no glass ceiling because there are no limits, honestly. And I think that it's important that we continue to talk about those things so people truly understand just how this industry has changed and built upon itself, particularly in branching from the music market, specifically in Korea and Japan and China, and taking advantage of the fact that there was a whole untapped music market for success in the United States and Europe, and, you know, even branching out into places like Oceania and Africa, and seeing how those fandoms have truly become international. I'm just so excited to explore and celebrate that community, because it's been such a roller coaster seeing how those communities truly do exist now, like outside of just like what fandom culture used to be. Also really just want to give the space for the international fans to be able to really engage, you know, because K-pop is better with other people to enjoy it with. I've truly enjoyed, you know, being able to not only have a space where like I can share my opinions about this genre and share my opinions about this music, and find people who agree with me, or, you know, even if they don't agree with me, are able to have that discourse with me and present content to an audience that is willing and excited to consume it. And I'm just so excited to be able to build this podcast into what it is because of that community that I've built through my TikTok presence, and now kind of like branching out into other socials, like seeing that start to grow. So that's another like big thing for it. It's not just about me like growing my presence. Like I've never been a social media content creator. I've never considered myself one, but, you know, seeing how this community has kind of rallied around the creators in these spaces and had these talks and this discourse and been able to share these opinions in a healthy manner in most cases, some cases, because that's another episode though, to talk about how the fandoms have evolved. But I love that, you know. I started off on TikTok in 2018 randomly. Like I had Musically on my phone. It updated and I ended up with TikTok. I had no idea what to expect. I would scroll on it from time to time and I was like, oh, you know, I actually kind of enjoy this. And I started posting just random things. You know, I started out just doing like lip syncs, like everybody did, lip syncing audios, following some trends here and there, but I never really took it serious. I ended up with a curated For You page over a few years. And then 2020 happened. You know, the world changed, everything shut down, everything shifted in that span of time. And I, like many others who have recently gotten into the fandoms, I had much more time on my hands to consume the content that was being put out. Because, you know, before that, I was working a full-time job. I had two very small children. I say very small, but at the time, I think, at the time of the shutdown, my daughter was 5, like just turned 6, and my son was 2, about to turn 3. So I was raising babies. I didn't have time to be active in the fandoms. Like I still listened to the music. I would listen to new comebacks, but I didn't have time to like consume content. Like I wasn't watching Hello Baby reruns. I wasn't watching, you know, survival shows. I wasn't able to allot time for that the way that I would have liked to, so to speak. But I had time now. And there was one night in like the late summer, because I'd actually been furloughed from work. So I was just trying to keep myself busy and failing miserably, mind you, because I was a mom again, mom, married, all that good stuff. But as the summer went on and we came up on, I want to say August of that year of 2020, I was cleaning and God's Menu came on my K-pop radio. I'd had the K-pop radio on just on shuffle that day, you know, starting off with Shinee, as I always did. But it would like cycle through different artists. Like I would get a lot of EXO. I would get a lot of GOT7, Wave V, groups from that particular era. And God's Menu came on, and I found myself just sitting there and like I was washing dishes and I was just kind of like this. I was like, oh, I like this. Sick. Yeah. And I was listening to it and I found myself. What? I'm so sorry for that accent. Like I found myself re-listening to it. Like I put the song on repeat multiple times. Like, and I was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Like I haven't heard a song that's gotten me like this hyped in a hot minute. Like it had been a minute since a K-pop song had truly made me like stop and like, hey, let me listen to that a few more times. Let me inject that into my bloodstream. And lo and behold, I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna deep dive into the music. Went to the artist page on Google Play Music, was what it was at the time, I believe. It hadn't quite cycled over to YouTube Music. Yes, I am an active YouTube music enjoyer. I do not care what anybody says. Anybody who thinks differently can fight me. I don't care. But I started listening to more of their music. Like I delved back in like the older EPs. I realized like My Pace was actually on my playlist. Like I stumbled across it and I just like saved it. I found Side Effects was also there. Miro, Get Cool. Like I had a bunch of like some of like their older title tracks were just on my playlist and I was like, oh, word. So I started deep diving more into it and then I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go look at the group. Like let's get on YouTube. Let's go find some content, right? Huge mistake. That was actually the biggest mistake of my life. And let me explain to you why you know what, I'm not even gonna put a time limit on that because honestly, there is no limit. It does not exist. I stumbled across the Studio Tune dance relay of God's Menu. Just watching. Like, I had been watching Shinee content and they had ended up in my recommended anyway. So there they were. Studio Chum, God's Menu. And Hyunjin. Hyunjin was actually the one that caught my eye. I said, you. Something about you. I don't know what it is. I haven't figured it out yet. But you've caught my attention, sir. Tell me what you need. And it spiraled from there. I started just like consuming some of like their dance content, like not getting too deep into like the talkers and stuff because I was like, oh, there's a lot here. There's a lot to dive into. But over the next few months, I started watching more of like their old content, like Two Kids Room, and I watched the survival show once because I did not need to traumatize myself more than that. Because be so for real, JYPE, like do not, you know what? I'm gonna enrage myself. That will be another episode where we will dive into that, but I'm not doing that today. I watched the survival show. I watched a lot of their older content. I heard a certain individual speak. One thing you need to know about me, most people do, I'm a sucker for a good accent. And I heard it and I said, question mark, Aussie? Hello? Wikipedia. I was all over that hoe. I was like, oh, okay, so that's a Sydney man. Who is you? I was lost at that point. Truly, that should have been my indicator to stop. It was not, because I have a sickness of the mind, as it were. And I kept deep diving, and I started really falling in love with the dynamic of the group. I started seeing how much adversity, how much struggle, how many obstacles that they had truly overcome. Like not just, you know, everything with their survival show and everything with their formation and, you know, just working their way up to God's Menu and like basically their struggle for any grasp of popularity within the Korean fan space, because they were struggling for music show wins. Like not to the point where like it was a lost cause, but it seemed like they were constantly fighting an uphill battle. Everything happened with Levanter, and seeing how quickly they recovered from that they went through such an honestly traumatic experience as a group, because losing a member is not an easy thing. It's not an easy feat under the best of circumstances. And seeing how they handled that with such a grace and such an appreciation that, you know, watching their District Unlock show, they were so distraught, thinking that they were going to disappoint their fandom for things that were completely out of their control. It had nothing to do with them specifically, and seeing how grateful they were for those who had stuck with them through all of that. And I cannot tell you the last time that I saw a group legitimately show such love and appreciation for not just their fan base, but for their careers, for their music, for their work. And that is what stuck with me. And that is what has continued to stick with me through all of these years that I have been an active part of the Stay fandom. And watching them journey through Kingdom, watching them face more adversity with having a member removed from what they were doing, from their work, and being forced to go without that member for many months after that. And watching them build camaraderie, not just with each other, but with other groups, you know, watching their relationship with ATs, watching their relationship with B2B, and watching them flourish in that competition. And then Thunderous happened, and I started posting content more regularly, specifically about a certain individual who, Chris Bang, you know, I realized he was my bias. I had not been bias wrecked ever, like that bad. Specifically, I've had other biases in other groups, but like to legitimately like find a bias that I was like, oh, you're a bias. Like I like the work that you do. I support everything that you do. I want to see you succeed. That was where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Somebody let me off this ride. I don't like it anymore. I'm nervous. So things started to take off for me, not just as a stay, but just in the realm of like being on social media. Like my account started to grow for me, just posting K-pop content, me talking about something that I loved that had always been considered cringe, had always been considered something that like you would be ostracized for if you talked about it in public. Very much like for anybody who grew up in like the early 2000s, early fandom culture, whether that be K-pop, anime, J-pop, really anything not normal. It was so relieving to find a community that liked what I posted about and that enjoyed it in the same way that I did. And to see that cultivate and grow. And then when I started posting content about Chan on Bubble and holding him accountable for his actions, because like one thing about me, two things for sure, I can't stand when a man be acting out of character. Like don't get me acting out of pocket, because now I'm stressed and now I'm taking you down with me because you gonna suffer the consequences of your actions and I am the consequences, right? So I started posting content like yelling about his behavior, and the amount of people who were like, you are speaking everything that I think, but I've never thought to actually say it out loud. I was like, bet, we're best friends now. And to see how quickly my account literally grew from that, from literally just screaming the name Christopher to the heavens, was so outlandish when it happened. I was like, there's no way. There is no way that this many of you are here listening to me yell about a man. Like, that's crazy. Like, I'm crazy, but I don't know who's worse, you or me, kind of thing. And I loved it. I loved making the content. I loved being able to laugh with people, laugh at myself, laugh with myself, laugh at everything that was going on in that same space and in that same span of time. It was truly just such a surreal experience as well, because I went from 200 followers at the beginning of 2021 to 15,000 by December of 2021. And that was a crazy amount of growth. And it came with its own implications, which again, another episode that we will get into, but I really just love how that specifically and K-pop in general has really connected me, not just to this community, to these fan spaces, to people that I never would have crossed paths with otherwise, but also it's built friendships. Like, I have lifelong friendships that I have forged through this fandom. I have some of the best friends I've ever made. I've made because of Stray Kids, because of K-pop. And I never thought that that would ever be a possibility. Not that I didn't think that I could make friends through K-pop, but I never imagined that my best friends would be because of K-pop. That's why I'm here. That's why this podcast exists. That's why I'm going to continue doing this, because I don't want it to just be me that finds a community here. That's what I want to do. I want to bring people together, because even if you ain't gotta like me, but I'm sure you'll like somebody that you interact with, right? Not to mention, this is just a fun little side project, and I'm truly just excited to see where it goes. With all of that said, I am super excited for a lot of these episodes that we have planned. Our next episode, we're actually going to be doing a little bit of Am I the Asshole, where we pick K-pop related Reddit posts and we tell you our opinions on whether or not they indeed are the asshole. Truly, it could go either way. I'm not actually the one cultivating that, and I'm a little nervous. I ain't even gonna lie, I ain't even gonna stunt. But I think it's going to be a little fun little introduction. Like, let's dip our toes in the water. Let's see what happens. And then, of course, we also have other episodes planned. There will be a little bit of history, a little bit of games, a little bit of this, that, and the third. So I hope you guys are ready. I'm really excited, and I hope that y'all are just as excited as I am to really just dive into this. That is actually it, though, for this intro. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to me rant about myself for now going on almost 25 minutes. And I hope you've enjoyed, listening to my journey. Listening to how this space has moved me, has changed me, has shaped me. And I hope that, through this podcast, I'll be able to help other people find and shape themselves. And in the process, maybe learn something new, something that you never thought of, something that you never imagined about this industry, from just the history overall, how first gen moved to fifth gen and, everything in between, to the hip hop influence. I'm going to talk about the hip hop influence, be so for real. On top of that, you can always follow us on social media to keep up with podcast updates. Podcast updates are actually available in our Discord server. I will actually link it in the description of whatever you are listening to this on. But it is also available in my linktree, which you can actually find on my YouTube. It is linked in my bio. If you have any additional comments, questions, or you just have episode topic ideas and you don't want to join the Discord, you can always email the podcast at soundcheckandchill, spelled all the way out, at gmail.com. That will be the best way to reach us. Or you can always DM me on Instagram or TikTok if, again, it survives. But please, if you have any future episode ideas, or you really just want to give your input and you really want to just share this with your friends, honestly, please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube. That will be the place where all of the video episodes of the podcast will be available, but you can also follow us on Spotify podcasts. And if anything changes as far as other places it is available, again, those will all be updated in my personal link tree as they become available. But I just can't wait. I can't wait to dive into all things K-pop with you guys and continue to celebrate this music and these fandoms and everything that we love about it together. So with that said, that's a wrap on this episode of Soundcheck and Chill. So until next time, keep streaming, keep dreaming, and as always, have a day.